Good evening, everyone. Thank you, organizers, for this wonderful opportunity. And I must thank Dr. Tushar and his team, as well as Dr. Parik, for putting up such a wonderful show. And more so with the quite an innovative theme about having some serious take-home messages for all of us, especially when we try and understand how a patient in a different under different circumstances uh, need to be treated, and with what are challenges are there in our hands. And these are something which I found was extremely practical way of looking at the scenarios, and something what we would also like to discuss in this today's discussion. So I have chosen couple of cases, and what would we would do is, let me present a case initially, and post that maybe now we have got three panels, three set of I would say tumor boards, and we have one tumor board which is a quite an affluent tumor board which can afford everything for their patient, and then we have one tumor board who is a poor man's tumor board, which they struggle all the time. And thirdly, of course, we have some more empathetic tumor board towards our old geriatric patients. So that is going to be the theme of today's discussion. So let me start the presentation with the first case. So let us finish this case first, and then probably I'll get to each tumor board desk. So here we had a 43-year-old male patient, education officer near Hyderabad. He had no addictions, no history of cancer, and he presented with the right-sided chest pain and cough for 2 months. Initially evaluated at local place, X-ray did show right-sided lung lesion, CT thorax did confirm right middle lobe lesion with query trans fissure extension into the lower lobe, encasing the middle lobe bronchus 2, and bronchus intermedius appeared to be free. And there was probably around a centimeter size subcarinal node. And CT confirmed non-small cell, CT FNSC did confirm non-small cell lung cancer. This was done outside. PET CT done subsequently did confirm the right hilar soft tissue lesion, almost of the same size, encasing the right main lobe bronchus. Also, right hilar node involvement was documented, and there was a bit of a low-grade metabolism in the subcarinal node, which was also identified on the PET scan. And of course, it was non-metastatic. This was FOB findings, nothing significant over here. As such, MRI brain was also done, which was normal. So clinically, this patient was diagnosed as stage T2N1M0. Patient was subsequently planned for surgery. So as a part of routine staging workup or the station workup, EBUS was also planned for the patient. And this patient eventually underwent a right middle lobe lobectomy with systematic lymph node dissection, mediastinal lymph node dissection on 30th April. This was his histopathology findings. It was again confirmed to be adenocarcinoma, no mixed variants over here. Again, size T 3.1, two hilar nodes are positive, rest all negative. Again, final histopathological stage confirmed to be T2N1. Node positive, this patient did receive adjuvant chemotherapy in view of node positive status. And of course, he had also had LVI. Patient did receive adjuvant for PEMSIS. We can discuss, we can debate why it happened and why it should be done or not. And subsequently, patient's EGFR report was sent, and somehow that report was lost in the transit. And no adjuvant RT was offered, obviously. Patient completed those 4 cycles, again came back with the final report, and he managed to get that report, came as exon 19 deletion positive. We already had one session where we had discussed about use of adjuvant TKI in this setting, especially the osimertinib. Patient did read about this trial, patient did ask for more information, and patient eventually agreed to go for osimertinib in this setting. So this was his pre-surgical scan. This is a post-surgery, of course, post-chemotherapy. You can easily make out the scan looks almost normal now. And this was all done, maybe as you can say, we have got enough data to why this patient was particularly taken into this particular set of treatment, where patient was found to be T2 N1 maybe, and the patient did receive initial surgical treatment, and post that patient did undergo subsequent being N1, patient did receive chemotherapy followed by osimertinib. So this is all about the case of the patient. Also, what are the guidelines? What do they tell us? And here comes the major part of discussion, today's discussion. Now, I believe we have this tumor board over A over here, B and C. That's probably what we are going to discuss. So, Dr. Malhotra, you are from the poor man's side, uh, and of course, I am sure all of you might have one captain who can take more leads in discussing, of course, and deciding what we are going to do. Just to brief the audience again one more time, tumor A has to decide on the government-based schemes and how they are going to proceed with the same patient. What if at all the patient comes in the government schemes? Tumor B has to decide on the patient who is in a geriatric age with a bit of comorbid conditions, obviously not fit for the treatment. And tumor C has to decide for a patient who is affording, who has got all the facilities in the world, but he lives alone and he doesn't have a lot of social or family backup at his home. So let me start with the table A. So what is going to be the treatment plan for this patient? It's early stage lung cancer, what we are looking at. Anyone?
So whatever the treatment plan has been put, it looks very appropriate under ideal scenario. So the patient should undergo mediastinal lymph node staging. If EBUS is a challenge in a government hospital, then a mediastinoscopy can be done. And in the same sitting, if frozen is showing a N1 disease, in the same sitting, he can undergo a right mid lobectomy and mediastinal lymph node dissection. Instead of EBUS, we can bypass it with a single OT by doing a mediastinoscopy, ipsilateral hilar and mediastinal lymph node dissection. If frozen is N1, then we can go ahead with surgery. If it comes out to be N2, then abandon and then plan for further therapy. So after that, as far as adjuvant chemo, yes, this right mid lobectomy still has a lot of respiratory reserve. So the patient should receive adjuvant chemotherapy, and pemetrexed cisplatin, I think it comes in under an all government scheme. 4 cycles of pemetrexed cisplatin will be ideal for this patient. I would try and give cisplatin. I can see his face, he looks frail. I know his creatinine clearance will be borderline, but still, even if it is 50 to 60, I would give a lesser dose of cisplatin for this patient. After giving 4 cycles of pemetrexed cisplatin, I know there is no evidence, but if you look into the PFS data of geftinib and erlotinib, and of course we have off-label osimertinib, which is available, but I would not offer it. I would offer a geftinib adjuvant duration. I don't know.
There is some data, we'll discuss about it.
Yes. So I will be so mediastinal lymph node dissection with mediastinoscopy, right mid lobectomy, the 4 cycle PEMSIS, and adjuvant geftinib duration not known.
So Brijmohan, how challenging it is to operate under Jyotiba Phule scheme, which you normally operate in the state. The reason being, I am concerned about the post-operative issues, challenges, complications, admissions, transfusions, leak, everything.
Middle lobectomy or pneumonectomy is not a big concern as far as post-operative period is concerned for otherwise healthy, good performance status patients. The only issue is mediastinoscopy followed by surgery. If the patient turned out to be N3, hospital won't get any money if you have to abandon the surgery. So what I would do is I will do the PET scan, convince the patient to do PET. If it turned out to be loco-regional disease, I will perform lobectomy along with systematic lymph node dissection and avoid doing probably mediastinoscopy and frozen. Because most of the hospitals which are running Mahatma Phule scheme are not having frozen. So that's the concern. The rest of the plan remains.
Dr. Malhotra, one quick comment from you.
So I think I completely agree with what my table has said. This is a relatively young man, non-smoker for a change. So his lung functions are expected to be good. The only concern in the pre-surgery evaluation is a small plus minus, should we say, carinal node. And most government hospitals do have a mediastinoscopy. So at one sitting, as my friend said, or at two sittings, we would want to make sure that that is not a diseased node. And the approach would be fine, get an open surgery done, and with 2B disease, adjuvant chemotherapy with pramitrexate and cisplatin, which is available in the essential drug list of most government hospitals. And after that, I would keep the patient under observation. And in case the patient is unlucky enough to relapse, then I would start a first generation EGFR TKI. That would be what I would do.
All right. So sounds good. I think let us go to the tumor board, the tumor board B. Since we have got all the facilities with us, when do you consider new adjuvant in such scenario? Now he's an only N1. He had a suspicious N2 to begin with. So what is the usual protocol or treatment protocol at your center for such patients? So I'm just confusing which is that tumor board B, which is the one that this is a geriatric one. Is that correct? Okay, for you guys.
This patient looks like a resectable N1 disease. So I would offer upfront surgery only.
Okay.
If there are bulky nodes, if there is invasion of the bronchus, bronchus means not the lobar bronchus, the lower lobe and the middle lobe bronchus. So there is pulmonary arterial involvement. And if the size, for the size, it is just T2. So I would not give neoadjuvant for this patient.
Correct. So the question what I asked, probably, let me put it again one more time. Which are the typical patients where you do consider offering neoadjuvant chemotherapy? Which are the typical cases where you think about offering such patients?
Bulky N1 node.
Okay.
Not N2 disease.
All right.
N1.
Okay. And what about the VATS versus open versus robotic? What do you normally, I mean, we have got all the facilities. Patient wants to have the best in the world. How would you choose?
For him, there is no problem of cost restraint. So robotic is okay.
Okay.
But I have had patients where for robotic, I have converted to VATS because there was an interlobal pulmonary artery injury and we could salvage. So either of them.
Okay. Now remember that this patient doesn't have any backup as such. So probably this patient also requires a bit of social support also, something probably we need to discuss in this patient.
Yes.
Obviously, I mean, we probably need not dwell too much over here. But Chandrasekhar, what are the tests you would recommend for this patient, considering that he has got all the facilities? Will you do PDL1? Will you do ALK? Will you do NGS? What will you do for this patient?
Nikhil, before we go ahead with that, I normally what I do is I review the data and think of what am I going to plan for this particular patient. If I'm planning chemotherapy, yes, it's a big yes. We are definitely going to go ahead. Point number two, we have got some data of adjuvant osimertinib. We had intermittently some data of using immunotherapy also in the adjuvant cases. I'm not very well conversant with the immunotherapy data, but then I did have some memory of reading it. So,
including new adjuvant also, there is some data.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So now we are talking of two main drugs, use of immunotherapy and use of TKI for adjuvant care. So if I'm planning on, if the patient is affording for both these therapies, then definitely yes, I would do a EGFR, preferably by an NGS and a PDL1 also.
Okay. But would you offer him immunotherapy at this point in time?
No, absolutely not.
So it is just for probably for our understanding about maybe disease biology or maybe some future plans,
Yes,
since that we have
yes,
got tissue in
yes.
our hand. So I think it's more for just
Theoretical
having
concern.
the reports in place, maybe rather than really acting on it. Is that the case?
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. So coming
Yeah,
to
Nikhil, since this patient is affording, and if you're doubting that it is a single station N2 disease, you are definitely going to give neoadjuvant PDL1 positive. There's very good data now to say that this could be a window of opportunity study for you. If you give checkpoint inhibitors and this patient shows excellent response, his outcome is going to be very good, just like pathological CRN2
Correct.
positive disease.
and
So I
there is
think
also a lot of data which is again combination also which is
Correct.
coming. So
Correct.
so of course these are all still emerging data. Maybe There will be so those patients where probably we may not offer too many treatments for whatever reasons. These are the patients one can seriously think about
Yeah.
as of now.
So why I said that was one of our patients, recently educated guy. We offered this, he's undergone surgery, a robotic surgery, and then we given him maintenance treatment.
Wonderful.
And the other thing is,
yeah.
your previous patient who underwent surgery got adjuvant chemotherapy. Sometime back we were running a clinical trial, so I have enrolled him into that. This was a study of a drug called canakinumab,
Yes,
which is
yes.
a IL-2 monoclonal antibody. So I would have offered him that.
So we are also part of the same study. I think that study got over by now, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming to to our tumor board C, now similar same sitting. Now just imagine this patient is a very old, frail geriatric patient. Obviously, 70 plus patient does have a lot of comorbid conditions. I think we have already discussed about the cardiac functions, poor cardiac function. So how would you approach this patient, Dr. Menon?
So the approach would be first is to evaluate the patient in detail and discuss whether to not treat would be a joint decision with the patient. So the expected outcomes and as well as the risk to life, including if this patient has diabetes and hypertension for 20 years, we would be concerned about even if she or he was fit for surgery, whether we would be able to deliver adjuvant chemotherapy. So these things need to be discussed, and the life expectancy definitely should be assessed before embarking on treatment, including a detailed comprehensive geriatric assessment. And there are various scores available to assess the risk and frailty of these patients with and also the percentage of mortality or morbidity with poly or single chemotherapy. So these things should be assessed first, and then we can take a joint decision, discuss with the patient whether we should go ahead with treatment and the pros and cons of each available modality for this patient, whether it is surgical or non-surgical.
Okay, so let us say that we did the CGA and maybe we thought that this patient is still unfit for treatment. It is very, I mean, on the look of it, let us say that this patient is not fit. Let's say it's a hypothetical case. So what are the options this patient has, considering that this disease is not a very widespread disease, and yet a lot can be done for the patient. So what are the other thoughts which which can be offered to the patient, which treatment which can be offered to the patient, and is there any data for that?
Hi, 70-year-old patient, after we see whether he is fit enough to receive any treatment. And if it is decided that yes, he is fit enough to receive, but not a candidate for surgery, he can be taken up either for only radical radiotherapy, or if he is fit enough, if Dr. Nandini says that he can be given concomitant chemotherapy, then chemoradiotherapy can be offered to this patient as the local treatment. And if he is not a candidate for addition of chemotherapy, then maybe only radiotherapy can be given to this to get a local control. Followed by, because he has this EGFR mutation, he can be directly considered for osimertinib.
I think that's a quite an excellent suggestion, something which probably we have done for a couple of patients, and we found that this patient do survive for a long time. Chemotherapy also at times is a very massive challenge, despite the fact that the doses might be a bit low. But let us say instead of 70, it's an 80-year-old patient, but they still need some treatment to be offered. Now, this question actually I want to offer to both the senior most oncologists sitting over here, Dr. Malhotra as well as Dr. Govind Babu, that would you consider giving only single agent TKI for this patient, even though the fact that this patient is an early stage?
Absolutely. If the patient is because of age and comorbidity and frailty, not a candidate for surgery, and also not a candidate for radiotherapy, then I would have no hesitation in labeling the patient as a palliative situation and trying to control the disease with either first generation or second generation or third generation TKI. Absolutely no hesitation over there.
Dr. Babu.
Yeah, Nikhil, I agree. In fact, I have patients who have added metronomic chemotherapy for them, and some of them have gone on for 2 to 3 years.
So that's a quite an important point and suggestion. The reason why I asked this question was actually I tried to search the literature and try to understand whether there is some data about use of I would say TKI in the early stage for old geriatric patients, and I couldn't come across any paper. I could come across a lot of early stage TKI, but that was more in an adjuvant setting, but not in this particular setting. Having said that, this is something probably, sometimes you don't need evidence all the time. We need more of a common sense. And that is exactly what probably I think our seniors probably are trying to tell us. So this is some initial data, what I could come across about use of Jeftinib and all that in the initial, but they're all in the adjuvant setting. Now, this discussion, I really want to bring it forward because our patient went on to receive, let's say, osimertinib, but osimertinib is not always possible for most of the patients because of the cost constraints. So there is a lot of data which is also available with certain other TKIs. I think one of the previous presentations also had discussed a bit about it, about CTONG study, about Radiant, as well as about the SELECT study. And there are some studies which are definitely positive, as over here, as you can see, the CTONG 1104, which post-operative setting in a EGFR mutation positive, there is a definite DFS benefit, if not the OS benefit. So this can be considered in the patient who may still not go for osimertinib. It is quite likely, especially in the cost constraint setting. So one cannot rule it out saying that it only has to be osimertinib. We have some data to back up. And this is some information what I got from some of the early guidelines. Now, these are the management of elderly patients in NSCLC. I believe they are from 2013. And after that, probably there is no real update over here. And actually, there is no real published data over here. Most of this data actually about the tolerance can be extrapolated from the advanced setting for the EGFR TKI for the octogenarians. So if you see all this information, especially when you talk about the recommendations, so in keeping with the other age groups, I would just go through the last line in the patients with the EGFR mutations. First line can be considered for EGFR TKI. However, they are not mentioned about it's an early stage. Again, this is some interesting data where again they try to assess the safety and efficacy of erlotinib. Again, they are really not mentioned, but as I like to believe this, most of the patients were advanced stage patients. In the breakup, there are very few early stage patients, but these were on the, we could count on the fingertips. And again, there is one more data which is available of use of EGFR TKIs in the non-small cell lung cancer. Again, the retrospective, again, very small number. Again, they have not mentioned the stage over here. I couldn't get the full text over here, but again, it was tolerable. So treatment is available, treatment is tolerable, treatment is efficacious. We may not have the data for especially the early stage setting. Having said that, one can consider, especially in a crisis like situation or in a difficult situations, when you talk about the geriatric patients population over here. So I think we don't have the audience poll, so I'll just skip this particular slide over here and let us move on to the case 2. Let me finish this particular case, and again, we probably will go to a second round of questions one more time. And here it was a 64 years old female who had, again, hypertension and rheumatoid arthritis. She was controlled with a weekly methotrexate and some sulfasalazine ETC. There was no family history. This patient had a cough to begin with somewhere in the month of January this year. And then in the month of May, she had a shoulder pain. Bronchoscopy did confirm left upper lobe mucosa unhealthy, and carina was widened, bled on touch, but somehow the biopsy was negative. Breast cytology was negative. And the PET scan was done, which was again reviewed, did confirm 3 by 3 by 2 centimeter left parahilar mass, compressing left main bronchus at the level of bifurcation with a patchy consolidation of the left upper lobe. Nodes, now there were some nodes which were positive, prevascular, right hilar, subcarinal, precarinal nodes were positive. Some were looked like granulomatous over here. And there were some non-specific subpleural opacities also. This was also a CT scan, considering the PET was done outside. One more good CT scan was subsequently done, and it again confirmed that the mass was present on the left side, encasing left pulmonary artery. Subcarinal nodes were positive, so it was an N2 disease. So this was this was a CT scan of this patient. As you can identify the nodes over here. Again, you can see a subcarinal node over here again, which was significant. Biopsy of the left lung mass confirmed adenocarcinoma, lung origin. MRI brain was done, was negative, and this patient subsequently underwent sampling, and no evidence of any granulomas or malignancy or any of the nodes were seen. Having said that, one only node subsequently turned out to be positive. So clinically, this patient did look like a CT1, C2, and let's say for discussion saying it was a node was positive. Okay, so this patient is a N2 disease to begin with. This was the PFT for the patient. And considering that patient had a N2 documented N2, large N2, patient was considered for chemoradiation, upfront chemoradiation. Patient's respiratory functions were checked, and patient was subsequently put on CTRT protocol with weekly paclitaxel carboplatin. That is something which we often use at our center, but there are other protocols which I'm sure most of you are available and might be using. And this patient subsequently was planned for consolidation durvalumab. Considering that the patient was in PR in the interim CT after a couple of weeks. Patient did receive durvalumab, but patient had a flaring of her rheumatoid arthritis, which was subsequently subsided with the analgesics in a couple of days. And again, bit of a flare up again, she had grade 3. And post that, the treatment was halted. Patient received a course of steroid, HCQs, again, sulfasalazine dose was adjusted, symptoms resolved. And the patient again continues to receive durvalumab as a consolidation with the DMRDs for rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, so coming back again to the same set of tumor boards. So we have a tumor board with a lot of financial challenges. We have a tumor board with a age-related challenge, and we have tumor board who can afford everything under the sun. So let me start with tumor board A. So this is something what we treated for this patient. You think it is appropriate, or you think something differently can be done?
No, I think definitive treatment, that is chemo radiation, was the correct plan. The concurrent chemotherapy Paclitaxel is well accepted across the centers. Now coming back to the adjuvant part, prevent the recurrence. Yes, if any mutation would have been possible, oral TKI would have been the ideal one. Not ideal, but would have been more feasible. Now coming back to durvalumab with the multidisciplinary tumor board A, what we got the cost constraint. So no durvalumab is available, let's say, for us. And all the markers are negative for EGFR cross. So we'll be putting on observation like any other patient. Close follow-up 3 monthly. And other chemo or radiation related side effects will be monitored, especially Paclitaxel, all neuropathies and all.
Okay.
I think that is the one adjuvant chemotherapy plan. Second question.
So what chemotherapies are offered in the schemes, government schemes? In this one?
Paclitaxel, PAMCs, which are the concurrent ones, they both are under
They
the
are
scheme,
available.
especially Maharashtra, Karnataka, yes.
Okay, and what kind of radiation techniques are available? So this is quite important.
So, if the patient is under ECHS, CGHS or Police Kalyan, IGRT is possible. On their panel, they don't have option of VMAT. So, and in case of like the state Yojana, generally we ask for minimum IGRT, but they end up giving us IMRT. So in that particular case, as a radiation oncologist, I guess most of us will agree that in case of say lung, IGRT basically has the biggest role in treatment of carcinoma lung, because it's a moving target. So in my particular practice, when I used to treat with schemes, what I used to do, I used to have a word with management ki iska to karna hi padega, kuch to karo. And we see if your machine is capable of giving image guidance for a treatment, most of the times management give you a free hand ki okay, theek hai, dekh lo X-ray karke kya fark padta hai usme. So So that is what we do, but minimum IMRT, I think will be good for this particular chap.
Sir, regarding the choice of chemotherapy, already the lung is bad. It looks like paclitaxel, the pneumonitis chances are high. I would offer a cis-ETO or a PEMSIS in this patient. So if the patient has an issue with creatinine clearance, only then I would give a weekly paclitaxel followed by 2 cycles of paclitaxel adjuvant. But in the background of pneumonitis, it would be wise to offer cisplatin plus etoposide or a PEMSIS based regimen.
So something which we also do follow. We have some patients who are on paclitaxel carboplatin, some patients on etosis. We decide on case-to-case basis, as we also understand etosis also causes a lot of esophagitis. And paclitaxel has almost 33% pneumonitis. So your point is very well taken. My concern remains, how are you going to convince the government to give you the better radiation package? What should be done to do that?
They have the money, they make the rules, sir. It is very simple.
So why can't we write to the government? Because
we do write, sir. I have written, I guess myself, I have written, I guess, tons of mails. And considering all this, our management was really fed up with the schemes. And last year they gave up. They gave up like this Maharashtra government scheme. They gave up. So we don't have schemes now at our center.
So Dr. Malhotra, I wanted your comment, and of course the last point also wanted your opinion about what are the challenges we expect, especially in this patient in the government schemes where we struggle to sometimes to get proteins, good nutritional supplement, and every admission comes with a cost for the patient at times.
So, I actually would like to disagree with my younger colleagues. I've seen been in oncology for 3 decades now, probably when they were in school. And I've seen a time where we could not treat patients of Hodgkin's disease and we could not treat patients of germ cell tumor. So now at least we have a essential drug list in most states where curable malignancies you can treat. And IMRT costing for a off-the-street patient 1 lakh plus at most centers, that is available in the government scheme. So, if you look at the perspective from the other side, you are looking at the greatest good of the greatest number. You cannot spend 20 lakhs of rupees on one patient and give that patient a checkpoint inhibitor and not be able to be left with money to give BEP to the next patient or ABVD to the next patient. So you have no government in the world which has surplus of money, right? Particularly our situation across the board, across states of the country, including the center, I think we need to keep that little bit of perspective in mind. So there is an ideal situation and there is a practical situation, and most of us have to compromise and improvise and give the practical solution to the patient to the best of your ability and your institution's ability.
So these are definitely words of wisdom as well as experience, I would say. And your point is very well taken, sir. Any other challenges?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
Dr. Anita.
yes, coming back to Tamil Nadu, I think after Arogrishi, Tamil Nadu was the next state, and I think I have been using it for like around 10 to 13 years. The system is quite robust. It is very difficult to sit down and criticize, or it's easy to criticize. We do get IMRT when there is an indication, early stage, patient really needs. You can't ask for an IMRT, IGRT at an advanced cancer, you will not get approval. We have got approval. I am with ECHS, CGHS, ESI, and I also treat in my medical college, the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister's scheme. We get all drugs. Even rituximab, trastuzumab, yes, they are given in an adjuvant setting, but not in a metastatic setting. So we have to support the system because we should not get exhausted. So people curable cancers may not get it. And whenever there is a palliation, we
So
apply
Dr.
for
Anita, let me interrupt you
apply for
because
palliative
we
chemotherapy.
are slightly short of time. I think they already buzzed the siren. So I take your point. We'll continue this discussion for sure. And let me quickly move on to my next group of tumor board, the affluent one. So Dr. Govind Babu, this patient wants proton.
Yeah. I am still not convinced about proton for this particular patient. So proton therapy has very, very specific indications. And in the list, one of the last one is re-radiation. But unfortunately, what I see is that has become the number one in all the patients who are being treated with proton.
We have a radiation oncologist on the table over there, or
No, this is what I've seen in the real world. I'm telling you.
No, I don't think as radiation oncologist for primary lung treatment, there's any data of proton. If you ask because our panel is of Apoding, then I would definitely do
Oh, Dr.
VMAT,
JB is
probably
here.
a 4D CT also.
yeah,
Sir,
Dr.
what
JP.
did you say?
I have to defend it. I have to defend it for many reasons. But one of the reasons in this patient, I would not hesitate to use proton. He's writing RTOG 617. He wants to escalate a dose. Second thing, this patient had a ILD. Believe that. Any ILD, if you are radiating, the likelihood of toxicity is high vis-a-vis 60 gray of a proton vis-a-vis a 7 or a photon. So, and Sagar, if you would have written to a government that this patient has a ILD and a guidance will help me to reduce margins. Believe me, if I'm on the other side, I would not hesitate. So we have to give a reason. We can't write that this patient, all lung cancer patients require IGRT. Upper lobe tumor, which is just not buzzing, I may not, okay? So similarly, we have to make a case to case. Like I completely agree with Dr. Govind Babu, sir. We are hyping that proton also. I'm not denying that, but we have a tool, we have to use it justifiably. That's it, what I'm trying to put it. Nothing more, nothing less.
So great. So we have, I think we are short of time, or we have a couple of minutes. Okay, so there is a bit of data just now what Dr. Agarwal was telling us about the pneumonitis, and there has been a trend towards lesser rates of pneumonitis with proton therapy. So one should know about what are the benefits. That is something which I also wanted to highlight in this particular study. And about any anti-EGFR therapy, let us say if the patient is a EGFR mutation positive, there is no strong data over here. Most of the studies over here, as you can see, this is a long list. They have used concurrent erlotinib with radiation or sequential, but none of the studies have been really beneficial over here. So even if the patient, let us say, is a EGFR mutation positive, it may not really help. A quick word about the geriatric patients. How are you going to approach this patient? Same patient, but of course in the geriatric group and with multiple comorbid conditions with a low ejection fraction.
Again, the age is going to be an issue while treating this patient. ILD is going to be an issue when giving chemoradiation. So in that case, we might as well only offer palliative radiotherapy rather than offering chemoradiotherapy for this patient, because we know she is in stage 3A. And if other medical, there are a lot of contraindications, might just end up in giving palliative radiotherapy for her. I mean, that itself will cause at least some benefit in her case.
So Dr. Menon, will you be okay to offer her eventual some immunotherapy, considering that it doesn't have a lot of issues in this
So I
patient?
would be very concerned. I would probably not offer her durvalumab with baseline ILD. Then if she has received traclicarbon, tolerated fairly well, but then again give her durvalumab in the background of rheumatoid arthritis, already on DMARDs with underlying lung disease and the TFT, which is also abnormal, I would not offer this patient at this age. And
So probably a bit of a radiation, and will you go for the full dose, or you might slightly abbreviate the dose for this patient? Or
We
how would
might
you?
have to reduce the dose for this patient.
Okay, okay. I think these are definitely challenging patients, what we often see in the practice. We do not know whether we are on a right track, but we do want to give something for the patient so that some response comes, some survival improves, and that's kind of philosophy we normally trade on all the time for this patient. So I think we don't have any audience questions. And so I think, remember again, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of the absence all the time. And as we have some seniors like Dr. Malhotra, Dr. Govind Babu, and Dr. Agarwal, who had really given us some important pointers how to really approach these patients at times. So on this note, I think I will stop over here.